And a big old test, and a big old test, a big old test. Sometimes we call it an exam. Alan, what you got?
So I have both earbuds in, and you sound like you're in stereo.
Uh, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Live in
yeah, just,
stereo. Am I in?
yeah. You're like in a music hall in my ears right now.
That's that's interesting. I wonder if I'm in Technicolor. You know,
Yeah,
I used to love those like when you'd see those old Looney Tunes back in the day, like on Saturday morning, and it would be like older,
mhm.
like one of the Looney Tunes episodes my parents would watch, and it would be like all black and white. But then, like on the color episodes, the old color episodes, it would be like in color, and like I
Hmm.
could tell.
Hmm. Yeah. They wanted
Oh,
you to know in case you only saw in black and white.
well, I guess, like my grandmother growing up had a TV in her kitchen that was not a color TV. Like it was a black and white
Hmm.
TV. So even colored shows
Yeah,
would not show up in color. So I guess maybe that's why they had to let you know what you were missing if you didn't have a color
yep,
TV.
correct.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway, welcome to Saber Martial Arts Podcast episode. This is about 55 by this point, which is wild to me. Super
Nice.
cool, super cool, and thank you all for sticking with us up to this point. Um, if you haven't yet, let's get the housekeeping out of the way right now. Go visit sabermartialarts.life and or go visit our Instagram page slash or at SMA Foundation, or go visit, even better than all of that, our Patreon page, patreon.com/SMA Foundation, and take a look at all the things we can offer you. If you are listening to this, you're already aware of the podcast, obviously. If you're listening to this through YouTube, thank you, and check out some of the most awesome stuff that we have on YouTube, which is consequently the topic of tonight's podcast. We did in the previous episode a commentary for the light fencing workshop that we were a part of. Is about a month ago now that we're recording this that we did this. So it's still fresh, but it's aged well. Does that make it's cured a little bit, if that makes sense? And I really enjoyed doing this commentary. It was 2 weeks ago now that we recorded this, but now we're following it up. So if you haven't like caught up on what the rules are for light fencing, or what we mean when we say things like USA light fencing and Terra Prime, then first of all, get out of the rock that you live under and go check out some of the things in the previous episodes concerning light fencing rules. We also talked with Chad, the head of Terra Prime, who is also the purveyor of the rule set that we'll be using not just here in these videos, but in international competition as well. So lots to catch up on if you haven't already, and we've covered it almost ad nauseum up to this point in several episodes over the course of the last 6 weeks or so. But it's a lot to take in, and we don't necessarily blame you for that. So go check them out. Alan, is there anything you kind of want to bring up that maybe we forgot to talk about last time, or just something that's like a key point that you want to talk about before we actually introduce what we're going to watch?
Yeah, so very important to remember that this was our first experience there. So we're
That's true.
learning how to be combatants. We're learning uh, correct rules in the game.
Yeah.
We're learning how to judge the game, and we're also learning how to referee the game, which are two different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a couple of times in the videos where I added, I think on the very last one, I added rules clarification so that you could kind of see
Yeah.
like what the heck's going on. But these are actually, I believe, in reverse order. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. Um, if not,
Well,
then doesn't matter.
we did fight first, you and I, and that is the first
Mhm.
video on the playlist. But I think you may have mentioned that like we're in order, but everyone else after that is in reverse order
Yeah.
potentially. Um,
So
so Alan and
yeah.
I fought
So
each other at the very beginning of the day. because Chad really, we had to leave a little early from the workshop. Everybody else had a few extra hours to work and ask questions and things. So Chad really wanted us to like intensively get the refereeing and judging, which are I have to separate the roles in my head when I'm talking about light fencing, because a lot of times in sparring of various martial arts, judging is judging and there's head judging, but in this case the terminology is just that the head judge is called the referee. It helps keep things a little more orderly, in my opinion.
Right. I think too, the referee is because the referee is the only one that can call halt. It's like the referee with a whistle in their mouth, right?
Correct.
That's how I see it. Whereas the judge is there to throw a flag if need be.
Right. Now, one thing also like on that note is Alan and I basically switched off like every match or two, like doing the refereeing and the judging. And if we weren't refereeing, we were judging from either side. So there's two side judges. They're on the opposite end of the ring from the referee, even though it's like a circle. But which is something else, that some people might not be ready for. They might be ready for like a squared ring, but it's a circle. Especially in fencing, that's not common. It's usually a very long rectangular one-way sort of a deal. Anyway, that switching back and forth was really, I'm glad that Chad like really made us do it. And it wasn't like he was, twisting our arms and making us do it. Like, it was very fun, but I'm glad that he was like insistent that we spend that time really narrowing that down, because we are among the very first group to be certified in all three categories: combatant, judging, referee, and coach. So like, I don't want to be a slouch. I don't want to be a scrub. I don't want to do things half-ass. I want to know what's going on, and I want to be correct. Right. So there may be moments where you, like you said, rules clarification, or, you might just say where you and I kind of screw up here and there. And that's perfect. I love those moments, because that's how we learn. You'll also, like, there's a timekeeper. There's all these like sort of roles. I wouldn't necessarily worry about all that. If you're watching this playlist on our YouTube page, which you should be pulling it up right now. It's called Light Fencing Day 2. That's the playlist on our YouTube page. Anyway, when you pull that, there'll be a link. When you pull that up, you will kind of notice. I just want you to pay attention to the fights, of course, how that scoring works, and then the referee and the judge, because you can't really see the judging all the time. But there are times where, as the referee, you have to kind of take the bull by the horns. Don't let the judges get away from you, so to speak. And everybody there was very good, but, it just showed the importance of a head judge or referee position, and having a really competent person in that position. And that wasn't necessarily me at that moment all the time, right? Like, being a really competent referee. So it was a great learning experience in that regard. And everything I already knew about martial arts judging helped, but I was able to learn a lot more too, which was a really valuable thing. I have to say thank you to them for that, because I always appreciate a good opportunity to learn a lot more about something that I thought I already knew a lot about. So, is that good? I think we can start this. Check it out. Let's see. Light Fencing Activation Workshop Day 2 playlist. It will be linked in the show description, so make sure you click that. And the first fight is Alan versus Mark 2. And we're going to hit play on that in 3, 2, 1, play. And I'm going to turn the volume way down, because it is super loud in here. I'm actually at the bar in the event center tonight. I'm not usually at the bar. I'm usually in the groom's closet, locked up. That sounds weird if you don't know what I'm talking. I live at a wedding venue. So. And Alan has provided at the bottom, like, that's not just for S's and G's. That's not just because Alan really wanted to. I got my leg out of the way on that one. That's not just because Alan wanted to put stuff at the bottom. That he's like following along with what Chad or the referee is saying and doing, and how the match is supposed to flow. So all those things at the bottom, that's legitimate semantics that are supposed to take place.
Right. So something that you won't normally see in most Saber fights, we talked about it last episode, is the spinning attacks.
Correct. Yeah.
Because of the arming motion that needs to happen. And as we go through this, there is a bit of arming that does need to happen in order for you to score. And if you don't have the priority, then you don't get the score.
Right. Right.
So you can spin, you can do whatever you want, but if you don't have priority, you still don't get score. So you can hit faster, but if you don't have the priority, there's no score you get. So when especially when you came in like that, you already had priority, and I knew you had priority, but I stopped myself from hitting you on the head.
Well, because we want to do our normal version of fighting, which we're going to get to in the next episode, or 2 episodes from now at least, when you went to San Diego. But we'll talk about that later.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, fighting those instincts, it was still fun, because like moments like this, no points, but at the same time, we just had a little fun moment where we can tell we're both like just trying to exercise the whole rule set in this match, because we kind of knew that we were only going to get to fight once this day. So we're just we're trying to work out all the kinks that we worked out the day before.
Right. And also trying to remember to pull the hand all the way back behind the head for the engagement.
Yeah.
And then from the first parry or void, we can actually just have the tip go behind the head.
Excellent match.
Yeah.
You got that
doing it.
You got that arming down though eventually, and I know like the day before, like I think we both struggled with that arming thing the day before, like quite a bit. But I think having the referee position, like seeing that arming situation in real time, is very difficult. We're just going to keep going down the plate. We're not going to pause it or anything unless we really want to. Who is this match? We have Frank versus Taylor, and it's already into the fighters ready. So like I said, if you're watching along with us, don't hit pause.
So this is actually my first time refereeing. So I uploaded everything in reverse, but it looks like the playlist is in the correct order.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So this is Frank on the left, Taylor on the right. They are pretty much old sparring buddies at this point, but you can see Taylor is very jumpy, very spinny.
Yep.
But Frank got that first one to the torso.
Almost squirrely.
Yeah.
Taylor's almost squirrely.
This is me trying to figure out who actually got the point, because I was looking at my judges. So.
What did that say? Hold up the amount of points scored
for the correct combatant.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought it said. And Chad was right there, and oodles of patience with us. I mean, just oodles. He could have very easily been very frustrated, but he didn't let on.
Yep, and there's this quick spin parried.
And it should be noted that Taylor is also getting certified for all 3 positions, I believe.
Correct.
So if you're in like the Philadelphia area, that will be someone in the very near future that you may be able to contact to get certified as a combatant. I mean, Frank Frank is just such a winner. He just wants to win, man.
So this is a conversation I had about the disarming. Like I tried to grab that I almost grabbed it out of the air, but I was like, no, he could have actually. Disarms don't cause halt,
right?
But only danger causes halt. So I could have grabbed it out of the air, because it is a harder floor and prevent something else from happening here in the future, which is here now, where his blade is out. I so if your blade goes out after fight is called, your parries don't actually count,
That's right.
which is something we talked about after the fact.
It's something that we kind of try to observe in most Saber
Mhm.
rule sets, but it is kind of hard to enforce sometimes. Like sometimes a
Mhm.
blade will go out in the middle of combat and they won't like they will allow that blade to be considered active, but I do kind of like that, like, okay, even if you block, but that blade is out, like this is a lightsaber fight. It can't just be a saber fight.
Yeah.
Now, this is unfortunate here that this weapon is really like it's kind of falling apart at the seams. I do not believe. I believe. Yeah, that's a saber from a company that we've talked about before that we won't name, but it's a very common company to get your saber from, and not a great idea to fight with these sabers.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's all I'll
Yeah.
say. Very common company, not exactly combat grade. And poor
Yeah.
Taylor is discovering that right now. I'm sure he
Yeah.
spent about $180 on that saber, and it looks like it's falling apart. It might have been a mystery box. Oh, I just gave away a hint.
Mhm. Maybe.
So
But the rules clarifications there actually were all pretty much what Chad said.
yeah,
If you can't really hear it, because we are in a bigger gym and you can barely hear him sometimes.
hmm
But 90 seconds if your saber goes out in between actions, so before or after a point, but before the word fight is called the next round.
right, right.
So this is James versus Kevin. You're refereeing this time, and I'm judging.
Is this my first ref job? It must
Yes,
have been.
correct.
All right. Had to put my teacher
So
voice on, right?
yeah, and yeah, there are certain hand movements and things that are usually used, by different
hmm
uh, martial arts things. So whenever we do certain things, it helps when you're watching the videos again. You can't quite hear the ref. Like you can watch uh, his hand motions and be like, oh, okay, this is the guy. Because if
Yeah.
you're watching this live, sometimes you can't hear. So you can watch the ref and go, okay, that person got this many points, etc.
I think that hand motion thing for me was like I'm trying to do my very best to match what Chad did
Mm-hmm.
every time. And if he had like a note for me, like this is the way I put my
Mm-hmm.
hand, I tried to like take it very seriously
Mm-hmm.
that he said that, because
Right.
I don't think he's the type of person. I don't think anybody's really the type of person to just like, you got to do it the way I do it because that's what I said. Most people aren't that way. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but he's just trying to be as clear as possible. And with the very first run of all these positions, right? If you're certifying people, you want to be so super clear and identical in the information you're presenting, right?
Right.
And I really thought that was good that he made it a point like that. Like one thing in retrospect, it's a really good idea in all martial arts. But he said like when you actually say the word fight, like you want
Mm-hmm.
to point your hands at both fighters, then point your hands to the middle when you say fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really doing that so much in this one, but then like later on he was like, you use your hands, use your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to remember it more often, and it
Right.
wasn't a natural motion for me, but it became a little more uh, organic for me.
Correct. Yeah. So Kevin, viewers know, or listeners know, Kevin actually won the first Capital Clash.
Yeah. Yeah. You
He
mentioned
won
that in the
against
last
James.
podcast. Yep.
Yeah. James here is also from Philly. He is uh, Taylor's often sparring partner.
Correct. Yep. And he's got some dope patches on his gi there.
Mm-hmm.
Some really cool ones. That was my first time seeing him fight too. He was not there the day before, so you know, always fun to watch somebody new. And I guess this will be Alan refereeing on this one.
Yeah. So Kayla versus Mason, these guys fight all the time, right? And then again, this is we saw them fight on the last playlist, but this is us judging and reffing. So they come up with some different things here. So you'll notice Kayla is holding her hand close to her chest. And what I learned after this is that if you do block with your hand there, sometimes the ref will call it a torso shot
Right.
because your hand is too close to your torso anyway. It would have cut through there.
Yeah,
So it's really up to the ref's discretion.
We mentioned that briefly in the last episode. I don't know that I was super clear about what I was talking about, but yeah, I really like that rule, man. It's one of those things that just the lightsaber's treated like a lightsaber. And even with a rule set that's not necessarily, first touch wins, it's that element of quote unquote realism for something that's not actually real.
Right.
That really just puts you in. It reminds you that we're playing Star Wars toys together again. It's not so serious. Now, as far as being a little more serious about the martial arts, this is one of those matches where you can see like there's a little bit of an application of the 7 forms here. Like Kayla's definitely got like a form 2-3 thing going on, and Mason is 100% form 5. It's like not even a question. A little form 1, but who isn't? But you can tell he's fighting like he's using a longsword. He's aggressive. He's using his body power. Although today, in this day, he was trying to bring his body power back a little bit because the day before he was kind of winding up on people. And Kayla's definitely very defensive and counter-offensive. But man, she's precise, and like, if for anybody who actually hasn't fought with a lightsaber before, one-handed is not like, it takes some strength. Look at her with the salvo, man. Look at her with the salvo. Gosh, that was excellent.
Yeah, again, you have until the word halt, not the word hit, until the word halt.
Yeah.
To score as high as you can. So
that was another thing about refereeing that Chad had to be real clear with us on, like, don't forget to say halt also, because they're going to keep going, even when you say hit. And, like, if it's a headshot hit, like, they might know it. They might stop, but they're not supposed to still. Right. So that was something, yeah.
All right, the Philly boys are fighting.
Yeah. They fight all the time, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Refereed by a somewhat Philly boy.
Right. So these guys are so used to fighting each other that they try to come up with new ways to hit each other. So
that first exchange did kind of look like choreography. That was pretty excellent.
Again, this is one of the reasons we want to do this, because it looked different and fit our criteria for safety, fun, and martial spirit, right?
Yeah.
So
you can definitely see the opening up of stylistic play in this type of rule set. And
correct.
You know me, man. I like to play toys with people. I like to play toys.
Well, it's very, very much open to that. It's not. It's very much who is not. It's not about who's faster. It's who can make the correct strike.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, and there it is. So Taylor got the point, and we called halt for equipment because the blade came out.
I think you're like 2 seconds ahead of me, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah, so 90 seconds to fix or replace their blade, and then if a weapon fails, after fight is called, then your parries don't count.
Right.
But in between, and this is why we need a scorekeeper.
So did both of these Philly boys have lost sabers so far today?
Right.
And then somebody else loses a saber, I think, too, that day.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where they're so used to fighting each other, they hit just a little bit faster, a little bit harder than usual,
Yeah.
and that salvo shows that.
Oh, that was so good too, man. That salvo so good. Yeah, depending
Mhm.
on where your timing is with our synchronization here, you might be a second or two off from us as well. But man, uh the the I wouldn't even know if I could put a form on this. I mean, Taylor's if you don't call it a Taru, then I don't know what you're looking at. And James is like, hold on, Jitsu, hang on tight, Jitsu. Uh, um,
Well, a little bit of background about James is he actually did FMA, the Filipino martial arts,
oh
and
yeah,
this is
actually that makes a lot of sense now that I look at some of his motions here. That makes a lot of sense.
and there was a power reset because they were going a little hard on each other, and then we did another equipment halt because his blade stopped again.
So let's see if this is the. Yep, it is. So if you are not really but like if you're interested in kind of trying to learn what different martial arts look like, you just mentioned James being an FMA person. I was like, oh, look at the way he holds his saber versus the way Taylor does. For
Mm-hmm.
me, a lot of times a telling thing with people who have done stick fighting is that they hold the tip of their saber up a little more vertically. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are used to doing a little more sword fighting, you put the tip towards the opponent a little more. I don't necessarily think either one is bad or good, but it's just one of those little stylistic things that you can start to pick up on for people. And another thing that
Right.
you see a lot of stick fighters do is kind of tip the or like tip the tip, as it were, of their blade forward, down, drop their elbow a little bit loose. In other words, that weapon arm is very loose by comparison to someone like maybe a longsword fighter who is formed but not flexed. Like, in other words, their structure is very sort of like skeletal and rigid, but they're not, tense and flexed up. They're very loose in their muscular movement. So anyway, just some stylistic. And there you see Frank too. I don't know if he's done Filipino martial arts. I know he's done some wushu with Chad, but
Mm-hmm.
Kevin as well. I don't think he's had any prior martial arts experience whatsoever, right? He told us
Correct.
that this was his first martial art, which is always so fun to hear.
Uh-huh.
And he has been opened up to a world of both European and Chinese weaponry because that's sort of Chad's two areas of expertise.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, I think it's so cool, and you can see it in his fighting style. He's definitely done
Right.
some Dao work. He said that he had done some of that with Chad before. They've been
Uh-huh.
exposed to spear and staff as well, which is so cool to me. Plus, if you go to Chad's kitchen, which we all did, it's just an armory for an ancient
Uh-huh.
warrior.
Right.
So cool. And I think Chad to this day was like, you can see it kind of in his posture. He's just really enjoying watching this thing he created kind of take life. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I'm happy to see for him because if you follow Terra Prime for any amount of time, you know how much work they've put in over the years into just like sharing
Right.
this information.
Right. And then again, the refereeing is hard because you're trying to watch
That
both
should be a shirt,
fighters.
man. Refereeing is hard.
Yeah, but also trust the judgment of your judges,
Yeah.
even if you didn't see anything. And one of those points should have been Kevin's, but we gave it to Frank.
And there was a couple moments where I deferred to my judges if I wasn't sure, but there were
Mm-hmm.
also I know there was at least one moment where I was like I didn't like it. Or I gave it to the other person that the judges gave it to
Mm-hmm.
because I was really set that I saw something hit first. And that was one of those moments where I heard like kind of from behind me a little bit like Chad like I don't know if he saw what I saw or not, but it was a
Right.
moment of like, okay, he gets his role right now. You know, he
Right.
understood his role in that moment. So that was kind of cool. You know, it's nice when you feel it work. These boys are, like you said, fight all the time, but they are loose and having at it right now. It's a
Hmm.
tight match.
You'll notice too, like they're playing with a ring, so they're doing a lot of circular motion,
Mm-hmm.
circular movement.
Mm-hmm.
They're not
Mm-hmm.
going side to side or straight forward and back. They're they're constantly wheeling and rotating just to with each other. But when you do this enough with somebody, you start to get their rhythm,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
basically
Yep.
what they've found with each other. It's still a very close game, but there
Oh my
was,
gosh, close.
uh, yep. So they had a couple more seconds, and
It could have gone either way.
yeah, and because we're still learning, the refereeing does eat up time if you're not careful.
Now, one thing about Frank's little fighting style, I want to point out. This is something I do in unarmed sparring that
Hmm.
I really like. Somebody taught it to me. Dennis Nackard, go look him up. You're gonna appreciate it. Nackord. Anyway, he's from the old Joe Louis fighting team. James and Mason is the next match here. I'll shut up in a second. But Frank does this little thing, and pay attention to it next time he's up. It's called a nibble step. At least that's what it was called when I was growing up. And we'll talk about it in a second. But it's a really 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 good. It just shows that his footwork is really dialed in. So anyway, we'll come to that in a second. Yeah, you see James's tip is upwards. And Mason's got
Hmm.
his tip towards him more, you know?
Yeah.
That long sword versus the stick fighter, which I like. You know, the loosey goosey on the left and form but not flexed on the right.
Hmm.
And did Mason just defer the point there? I feel like,
Yes.
yeah,
Correct.
okay. That's what I thought. And this is one of those moments where I'm trying to remember, like, okay, left hand first, right hand
Hmm.
second. Because a lot of times we'll just announce the higher score first. But in this one,
Right.
it's the way Chad does it every time is left to right.
Hmm.
So
From
that's
his point of view.
right. And that's exactly. And that's what I had to do over and over again in my head.
Yeah. Again, that's one of those things where, especially with a ring, not a squared circle, a ring, it's hard to to figure out sometimes. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And it's incumbent upon the fighters to actually reset to the proper spot too, because sometimes they'll
correct.
just switch places just to quickly reset, but then like,
Hmm.
oh wait, we have to go back to the other side.
All right. It keeps the what's it called, scorekeeper on it too, to make sure that after they reset, it's just so Mason pulled back just quickly on that one. He didn't actually make contact,
Yeah, it was a
but
little
then
questionable. Oh, good exchange, good exchange.
yeah, but then there was a scorekeeping thing here because I believe you announced the points if you have the volume up,
I don't
but
know.
it still goes to time. Um, but it's okay because it still went to time, and the person that won would still win.
Right, right,
But it was just one of those things where that's why one person is scorekeeper, one person's keeping time, another
right.
person is referee, and then you have two judges. You do need a bit of a staff, especially when you're having to give multiple points over a period of time,
And the
right?
day before, Chad was kind of loosely keeping score as well. So I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of my job to loosely keep
Mm-hmm.
score, but it wasn't. Like, as the referee, you need to trust your scorekeeper or have a scorekeeper. Now, if you don't have one, you do have to make sure that you, as the referee, are keeping a good bit of arithmetic in your head, you know?
Right.
Um,
Try to count to 15 in American Sign Language. You can do that on one hand, and it makes it easy if you keep your hands, in those positions. Um, and that was the way I would do it, but that's just me.
I can keep track of two numbers, right? Once
Hmm.
I get past two, then I really start to struggle.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can keep track of two numbers. And if the people reset on the correct side, I can hopefully add their two numbers without too much of a mistake. Um,
Correct.
but yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. You want a scorekeeper, obviously, in official situations. In training, the referee can keep score, and make a mistake here or there, and people aren't going to get upset. It is what it is. But yeah, people who aren't fighting, that's the easiest way. That's the way we did it. You see Kayla over there with the time, uh, and then whoever else. I think Mason was keeping score. He's a math teacher
Uh,
anyway, right?
I think Frank was keeping score on that one.
Oh, okay, okay. You can't even hear Frank when he talks half the time. He's got
Yeah,
such a quiet demeanor, and then he gets
right.
in the fight, and he's a hurricane. So who's the next match here?
So this is Kayla versus Frank. They're fighting
Ah,
again.
yes. Ah, yes.
So this is them again. These guys fight almost every weekend, um, so they know each other and they know each other's tells and everything like that. So this is actually one of those fights where you just like see them going back and forth, um, with excellent rallies and understanding like, okay, that's that movement turns into this. Okay, this is how long your reach is. Oh, you're gonna spin. I'm gonna step out of the way. It's a very much like an old sparring partner game, right?
Yeah. Well, and different than Frank and Kevin too, because Kayla turns up the heat on Frank. Like you can tell as soon as she gets in there with Frank, it's like
Yeah.
okay. But with Frank and Kevin, it was a lot more like a lot more of like a dance. This is
Right.
this is combat. These two are fighting.
Right.
Now you can not really see Frank's nibble step as much in this because Kayla is just putting the pressure on him so much. But basically, you take these tiny little steps forward and backward as you rotate up and down the circle, not just stepping forward and backward. But that rotation is a key part of it because what you're doing is you're cutting off distance by cutting off the lateral movement. It's such a strange thing, but it was taught to me by a guy who was a world class kickboxer. So is this just an adjustment of how you're moving as opposed to being able to see every little step when you come in or when you go out. You're just cutting off the left and right, which actually gives you the forward and backward. It's a little strange. Maybe it's something I should. It's definitely something that I could do for Makashi and Gem. So maybe something we do in the holocron one night.
Hmm.
It'd be a fun little footwork exercise. Maybe a small holocron. There we go. That's something we'll do. The nibble step, really good, especially if you're into kickboxing or any sort of point fighting. It sort of cuts off those angles without telling or telegraphing when you're going to come in. And you may actually see it
Right.
here in this match with James because James has a similar strategy in his footwork, but the footwork is very different. So if you actually look at their feet, you're going to see similar types of movement, but in different execution. This should be a fun match. Frank is moving a little bit. Oh, there you go. You see little tinies to the side. And James kind of dives in, but it's not like uncontrolled. It's like almost lazy dives, but like technical lazy. I like it. Relaxed is a
Right.
better way to say it. Relaxed.
Yep.
Nobody
And
wants
you
to be
got
called
that
lazy.
salvo.
Was that because you didn't say halt? Is that why?
Yeah.
Okay.
But also Frank's weapon flickered out.
Oh, did it? Okay. Okay. I didn't see that.
So when you watch that over again, that was because see his blade's flickering on and off right now. Um, in when they hit each other, and he actually will hit his blade on himself to try to get it to work again.
Huh. Oh, yeah. There you go. Man, the struggle is real. Getting a real good lightsaber. The struggle is real.
Mm-hmm.
Don't bring your Galaxy's Edge saber to the combat ring.
Right. I mean, it'll work, but not for long.
Till it turns into like a prison shank.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And excellent feat of movement
Oh!
and kind of just circling there, right? And the spin for
Yep.
Frank.
Yep. Frank has an upward strike that he scored on me with a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew one of the reasons I say like Kayla's so aggressive with him is like he scored on her with it,
Mm-hmm.
and dude, she was ticked.
Mm-hmm.
When he scored on me with it, I was just impressed, and I was like, "Hey, man, that's a great strike, nice job, excellent technique, the whole deal." When she got scored on me, she was like, "Ah!" Like, I'm pretty sure I heard the bad words come out.
Yeah. Oh, so a lot of times, especially when you spar someone a lot, you're like, ah, you got me with that same
Yeah.
thing again.
He tried it
You
on
know.
James there. That's why I brought it up. I don't know if he scored with
Mm-hmm.
it, but he tried it on James a few times. And it's where, you might call it supinated, but he turned his wrist upwards, tipped his blade down and out to the side on his outside, and swung it upward. It kind of looked like he chambers it like a straight horizontal strike to the torso, but he tips the blade down as it's coming up. Shout out to Saber Light Knights. I'm wearing your shirt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is as we're slowly packing up. As you can tell, like bits of our armor have been
Yep,
packed
yep,
away.
yep. Well, at this
As we,
point too, we realized that we weren't fighting at all the rest of the day.
yeah.
Um,
So part of this too, we decided to do is clearly communicate through how many points and where we saw the hit.
yep, yep,
Right. So
yep.
we would take one hand and say this person got this many points, and the other hand would be like we tap our leg or our torso or our head or our arm.
Yeah, as the judges, that's so helpful to the referee, man. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, because I was trying to do it too, and I always do that, like because I do that when I'm sparring, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
MMA or saber fighting or sword fighting, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I tap what you hit every time, and I tell
Mm-hmm.
you, good job. Like even even in MMA, like I get told all the time by some of my sparring partners,
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, yeah, I know I hit you there. Like you don't need, dude, it's just a force of habit. Just take the compliment.
Yeah.
Um, oh look, I love Frank's guard there, man. That is very interesting. It's almost like half sorting, but you can't half sort a lightsaber. He's
Right.
supporting his. This is a technique that Chad showed us in the forms that he in the Makashi form.
Mm-hmm.
He's supporting his saber hand with his offhand. It's very interesting. Not something I would do by instinct, but I really like it, and it's something that I've added to the repertoire as a result of Chad teaching it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Oh, you can definitely tell I was eating cheeseburgers that weekend. We had good food up there, man. Shout out to Ann Arbor. Good food. Pizza
Yes.
was good. I never think pizza outside of the mid or the East Coast is good, but it was good pizza.
Yep. Pretty good.
All right, guys. Frank with the quick victory there. Taylor, man, good fight. You can't do anything about it. I think Taylor really, really, really likes martial arts. You know what I mean? You can tell he's done
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of them. He's done Taekwondo. He's black belt in Taekwondo. So that's the whole playlist. That was Alan. Is there any reason why we can't Well, how long is this barbecue playlist? It
Pretty
says,
long.
is it pretty long? Well, all right, we'll do that in a
Yeah,
separate episode. I was gonna say, is there a reason we can't? Yeah, there's a reason we shouldn't just do it right now.
yeah.
But let's chat a little bit about that. What we just saw. So 3 minutes isn't a lot of time to analyze any one fight as it's happening. You can, but we're here to kind of talk about the whole experience at the same time. So we're talking about the
Well,
refereeing,
also,
we're talking about the fighting, we're talking about the judging. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, let's
well,
just unpack it all.
I'm just pointing out that you can look at this stuff and but it's only a snippet, right? There, you have 3 minutes of action, but really a lot of it is watching the tapes over and over again, looking at the different ways people fight and everything like that. And if you don't watch yourself fight, it's hard to think that
Yeah,
you have any bad habits, but it's clear as day when there's an impartial judge like a camera that just shows you like what you tend to do,
yeah,
whether you move first with your arm, even though your coach keeps telling you not to move your arm first. When when you're doing your technique, or anything of that nature. So those of you that haven't watched yourself fight for whatever reason, if you're looking into the combat or even watch yourself do kata, um, it's very important that you do so that you can see with another set of eyes what your teacher's trying to tell you what to do.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, for me, trying to learn how to referee, learn
Hmm.
how to judge, learn
Yeah.
how to compete in the rule set, and then also learning how to do it for people who I'd never seen fight before.
Hmm.
What, except for you and me, of course,
Hmm.
was man, you're talking about layering on the challenges, right?
Right.
And that's like my brain is calculating all of the things, still kind of like as I'm watching these matches. I think being a referee sometimes spoils you, in the sense that like you're looking for so many things, but it also slows you down. Um, when you watch back, you kind of like you lose the fight for the fight. But as a
Hmm.
fighter, somebody who doesn't do a lot of judging or has never been the head judge or referee in any rule set, you kind of get a pure, just a sense of, I have one job. My job is
Right.
to stay within the rules and win.
Right.
Um, and that does take a lot of stress off of you, but you learn so much more when you're open to doing all of the different roles. And
Hmm.
that's one of those things that we've always talked about: always training, always judging. And we
Right.
don't say always judging in like we're sitting back in the corner, crossed arms, judging you. It's a way to remind ourselves like you should always be watching, you should always be learning how people fight, who's winning when, what techniques are happening and working, and you know a good idea of really defense and offense, which is like, duh, one is this, one is that. No, there's a lot of people who don't even actually understand the difference between offense and defense.
Right.
And just like stepping back and being forced into a position to judge is so beneficial to a martial artist who wants to be a good fighter. Um,
Right.
and you do hear it now, like this. This is a hot topic in combat sports right now. The quality of judging, and definitely in all combat sports, professional and otherwise, it's it's a crapshoot what you're going to get for judging on any given day. And it's unfortunate when people's safety is at risk, but when it's just a matter of score and things like that, it really helps to have competent judges. And you hear people say like, "Oh, you shouldn't be a judge if you weren't a fighter." I don't know that that's necessarily the truth. You shouldn't be a
Right.
judge if you don't know what you're looking at. Now, maybe that's
Correct.
because you were a fighter, Maybe you were just a coach. Maybe you did karate or jujitsu or taekwondo or judo as a kid or boxing a little bit, or maybe you wrestled in high school. That's all. You don't necessarily have to have been a fighter in the thing, but you do have to know what you're looking at, and you should have to pass some sort of test to do that. Well, that's what we did, right? Chad the whole time is basically grading us, right? I made the joke at the beginning of this episode. I test, a long test is an exam. That's what we were going through. We're going through an exam, a 3-day exam. Can you fight? Right? Not can you win fights? Can you fight?
Mm-hmm.
Can you judge? And can you referee?
Right.
And if you can do all three of those things, then you can coach. It's kind of the way I saw it. That's not necessarily the way the math actually works, but that's the way I saw it, and that's kind of the seriousness I tried to take it with, right? Because if I'm going to share this with anybody, I have to be really, really well versed in it. Otherwise, I'm blowing smoke, and that's not the business I'm in.
Correct.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, I was completely agreeing with you that you have to know all of that, especially with the word coach, right? Yeah. You do have to be able to see it from everyone's point of view. You might not have to be a combatant to be a coach, but you certainly have to be able to see it from their point of view.
Right, which is what I mean when I say you have to be able to fight. Right?
Yeah.
You just have to be able to mechanically understand what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because you don't want to be punched in the face doesn't mean you can't teach somebody how to box.
Exactly.
Right? So
Yeah. I am not an MMA fighter, but I coach MMA fighters all the time, right? A lot of MMA cornermen were never fighters. But they did other things. They competed or have coached for a long time, or just practiced, trained themselves for a long, long time, right? And that, like, basically what I'm trying to say is these three roles, it's kind of nice that he kind of broke it down into those three cut and dry days, right? Like combat, coaching, refereeing, and judging. It's like three pillars, right? Or 3 points of the triangle, whatever you want to say.
And it's not a new paradigm either. This is based on, other martial arts and points of combat, and
which lends it its own legitimacy.
Exactly.
Chad is not just, again, blowing smoke. This is from experience, and he's also drawn from other people's experience. Like he's very, very open about where he gets information and what he's sharing. And I really can't say enough about that. We already were fans of Terra Prime and everything, but I really can't say enough about the guy after meeting him just as a person, stand-up dude. And the group of people that we were, like, it's always a curious situation when you go into another group of martial artists and you're going to be sparring for a while, right? Like, what am I getting myself into? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to hurt somebody else? Of course, that's never the intention, but some people it is. And you never know who and what you're walking into. That was not the case. Never did I once feel like anybody was either judging, like, poorly upon our character, nor were they, like, for lack of a better expression, being dicks. Like, it was always really just about, like, having good matches. We talked about this a little bit, but I think we really benefited from doing things like practicing spinning moves, practicing feints. That was really, really beneficial because we started to see people actually trying to use it. And as a coach, as a teacher, when you actually see somebody do the thing you mentioned to them, especially if you've been saying it till you're blue in the face and they finally do it, it's great. And Chad really just wanted to see more action, more spinning, more countering, more, more sabery. And it pulled it out of us right away. He kind of just started with the fun stuff, got everybody's mood light. And then when we went into rallying, which is basically randori or just back and forth, you're not trying to score. You're just trying to practice back and forth, offense, defense, arming and position and such. It's like we got all the let out with the fun stuff and the goofy, not really goofy, but we did the Ataru so that we could get back to the Shicho without losing focus. And that was a smart teaching tactic on his part. Just open right up with the fun, wacky stuff, and then you can dial it back down to the basics, and have everybody actually show quality after that. And that's something I do with the little kids all the time, right? Like when you're teaching a little Tigers class, it's a lot the same as teaching a group of adults. You make them run around the room, you do a little obstacle course, you hit the targets really hard for, 5-10 minutes, and then you do the lesson. Then you make them focus, because they came in with too much energy in the first place. And with adults, it's mental energy. They come in with too much mental energy. So you get all that mental energy out, and then they can just have fun and learn martial arts. So excellent teaching, excellent combat. I mean, I don't want to say I'm trying to draw the podcast out, but I am trying to kind of like think about the various things that happened. A lot happened over 3 days. Now, we didn't see any of this because they haven't actually had any of these competitions yet. Maybe they did in France. I don't know if they did in the U.S. yet. But the Dulan or kata competition or forms competition, Terra Prime's YouTube channel, maybe this is a good topic to kind of close on, just posted the, what does he call them, compulsory forms, which is basically the Dulan that Terra Prime created for each of their 7 forms. And he calls them the compulsory forms because these would be your qualifiers for competition. But you don't have to necessarily do these. He did say that, like if your school or curriculum teaches a form that matches certain criteria for these compulsory forms, like proper arming or, technical strike, blah, blah, blah. It's all very standard across martial arts, stances, things like that, that you could submit that to be a qualifier. So that's a cool thing. But if you're somebody who's maybe, we talked a few weeks ago about, in the car actually, about like creating kata from scratch, that's going to be releasing. It's probably out by the time you're hearing this. That's a good thing to look at. So go check out the Terra Prime channel, because just recently, within the last couple of weeks, I think, he's posted a couple of those compulsory forms. Some of the people that you saw fight in these videos are doing them in those videos. And those are available and open to use should you get certified as any of these roles. If you want to be a combatant, though, you can also compete in just forms. You don't necessarily have to spar to compete in this light fencing thing. You could do a light fencing form or a saber form and still compete in competition. And not compete in where else are you going to compete? But learning them is a different side of that, right? Like performing is one thing. You have to learn that thing first. And it's really great. He's been doing this since 2012, but they're up there. They're right there for you to see. And the older videos, Chad is doing them, but in these newer videos, his students are doing them. So, that is really, I like the idea of a qualifier because that makes it very official. In international karate competition, you always have a qualifier, of course, or you're doing forms that are either prescribed or you have a set that you can choose from, right? But in this sense, this is like, okay, if you can do this, you can show us your version now, right?
Right.
So you qualify, and then when you actually do competition, you can do whatever form you want, and then you're judged upon that. So it's kind of nice because if it gives you the opportunity to learn somebody else's form, should you choose to do one of these compulsory forms, but it also gives you the chance to do your forms. Man, I love that kind of stuff. I really do. When I would judge traditional martial arts tournaments, kata was always my favorite thing to judge because I got to see other martial arts traditions, but then I would also get to see creative forms where those traditions would sort of like the toy box would explode, as it were. And your Power Rangers were playing with your Ninja Turtles, we're playing with your Han Solo, we're playing with your Transformers, right? Like you would get to see somebody might do Kuk Wan, and then they compete in traditional form, and I would see a judge next to me who was familiar with the Korean forms and would be like, oh man, I love that form. What a great job on that form. I wouldn't know the form, but I would be able to tell, like, oh man, they had excellent stances, their punches were crisp, their eye contact was they flipped their head in the right direction each time. It doesn't matter what form you're doing if those things are there. That's good martial arts. And that's the thing I
Correct.
really love about forms competition. It's so open to both tradition and exploration. Oh, so almost more than sparring, because sparring a lot of times just not getting hit or getting the other person hit takes priority over your style. But all of this opens up style so much more than we're used to seeing. Now, next week, preview, we will do commentary for the San Diego Sabers playlist, and the matches are all about the same amount of time, but there's 15 of them, so that's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour worth of fun. And we'll see. Maybe we can get Matthew to watch with us. We'll see what we can do. I have his phone number now. Ha 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 ha, Matthew, I have your phone number now. So maybe I'll send him a text. But either way, we'll try and do that. So you guys get a lot of combat, whack, 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 right in a row. Hopefully more to follow soon here. I know Saber Light's got an event coming up next month. Hopefully by the time you're hearing this, it won't be too late to go to Charlottesville, Virginia and hang out with them. But if it is too late, sorry, check it out. We'll have some of that footage later, and they will on their YouTube channel. So check out Saber Light Knight's YouTube channel for all of their fights. They do them every week. Great guys and gals. We love them there, and they're going to be doing seminars coming up. But if you're near Ann Arbor, Michigan, call up the West Liberty Athletic Club and ask them how you can get involved with the Terra Prime lightsaber guys. And if you're not in that area, send anyone who a message. Definitely send us a message. We'll get you started with some lightsaber lessons. We do it all the time. We want to do it more, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. Alan, what else you got? We did all the housekeeping. That was the preview. Am I forgetting anything?
Yeah. No. We are gearing up to have more guests and more content here soon. Yeah. Nothing too crazy at the moment, but we are gearing up to do a bunch of stuff. So no spoilers.
We have made, when Alan was here visiting while we were going up to Michigan, we tried to crack some things out, and by the time you're hearing this, hopefully some of that has hit your eyes and ears. And actually, I've got some of that rendering right now, Alan. It's super cool. I really like. Yeah, finally we got lightsabers in a cage in a good way, and we're gonna do more of that. But I am excited because I would really like next year to be able to actually be in person for some of these things, and it's looking like that might be somewhat possible for, I don't know. at least a good fraction of those things. So that'll be cool. I'm so sick after 2019. I'm so sick of just watching all these things on YouTube. I want to be there in person more often. You know, it's
Absolutely.
so much more fun. I really enjoyed dusting off the old fighting sabers, you know, and getting to play with the guys in Ann Arbor. And I'm super jealous that a week after that, you got to hang out with our good friends from San Diego. So, you know, I'll be living vicariously through the YouTube channel again next week. So, you guys, thank you so much for sticking with us through 50, however many episodes, hopefully 550, however many more. And, you know, keep your ears peeled for all the cool things. Sojido, we got a third one of those to record coming up. We've got 2 of those out on the airwaves. We got Sensei Yamasaki's episode, which is so special. Please listen to that over and over again. The amount of things that he just spews out of his mouth that are so incredibly awesome. And in his words, he's just a normal guy. So I want to one day be just that kind of normal guy. I'll tell you. So check out what we have offered already from the podcast, what we got in the future from the channels of all the kinds, the Patreons, the martial arts lifes and all the things. And guys, gals, aliens, and all the things, bring your own saber.
This party's over.